What highly illegal thing took place at your high school? Story 1. Two of the students planned and carried out a coordinated attack on one of the math teachers by waiting by the top of the stairs between periods. And when he passed by them to go down the steps, one of them pushed him from behind while the other put his leg out to trip him. The teacher fell down the steps and broke his neck and back and was paralyzed from the neck down. The kid's reasoning? Because one of them was dropped from the basketball team because he was failing that teacher's math class. Both of them were 15, so they didn't get jail time, but they both got expelled and were sent to juvie. The teachers sued the school district and got a settlement in the lower 7-digit range. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. Our football coach took off with one of the girls in the high school and moved to Mexico and married her. He had a wife and kids. They then hired a brand new football coach who was 23 years old. Before the end of his first year, he was hooking up with an 18-year-old senior. They also took off and went somewhere. We just went without a coach for a couple years. Story 3. We had a softball coach sleep with his students, but a far more interesting story that didn't technically take place on school grounds, there was this kid who was constantly being harassed by bullies. They would even follow him around after school and attack him. So there was this hardware store across the street, and a lot of kids would hang out in the parking lot after school. The bullies chased the kid inside and cornered him in the garden section. They kept hitting and kicking him, so the dude grabbed an axe from one of the shelves and just started swinging. All the bullies ended up in the hospital with various injuries. Security camera got the whole thing, but I can't remember now if Gimli's son of Glowin was charged or not, or if it was ruled self-defense. Update: I followed up with my sister who actually knew the kids involved better than me. She was closer to their age. The news articles that came out at the time didn't really talk about the pattern of abuse that led to the axe kicking, but she did confirm that Gimli was sent to juvie for a while. She remembered when he got out, and as far as she knew, he was doing well. Story 4. Had a pretty controversial case involving a handicapped student who had cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy. His parents filed a lawsuit accusing two of his handlers of abusing him by dumping him out of his chair and forcing him to wear a neck brace so he'd look them in the eye. Worst part was, I don't think the handlers suffered any consequences. I looked up the articles on it, and all of them highlight the abuse and the lawsuit, but none follow through with the results, which is frustrating. The principal hired a bunch of students to sell steroids at the local gym. Same principal gave the same students a list of kids who were questioning their sexuality with the counselor before GSAs were a thing, and they all had their lockers bashed in with a baseball bat. One of the kids had his parents notified and was beaten within an inch of his life. Art teacher used to hotbox her classroom and then used the kiln fan to pull all the smoke out. Story 6. Pre-internet days, kinda, CDs were a thing. I had a massive CD collection in a giant book in my locker. I had typed up lists of all the artists and albums I owned, so I had these flyers everywhere, and for $3 a CD, I'd burn you a copy. This was right when CD burners came out, and my stepdad was super into the latest and greatest tech, so we had the cool gadgets when they came out. I was eventually caught, but for a time, I made killer money. Story 7. The cool gang of kids, not me, I've never been anywhere near cool, got into a dare contest, which ended up with one of them having to get a pair of knickers from a particular girl. She didn't want to play the game, so he ended up cornering her in a boy's toilet and cutting them off with a knife. We never saw him at the school again. All games were banned. Story 8. A special ed kid got jumped by a dude on his way to school and was beaten bloody. The whole thing was recorded by the guy's girlfriend and her friend. The whole time they were cheering him on and yelling things like "World Star" and so on. She later posted it on Instagram, which pissed everyone off, and just about everyone wanted to beat the dude in the vid up. He was given temporary suspension, BS, while the police took care of him. From what I know, he was given an assault charge. Also, side note, there was this girl at my school who was in minor league boxing and who was ready to beat him up. She even tried looking for him by his house. Story 9. A little bit of backstory first. Our school had a big renovation ongoing, and because of that, almost half the school was closed down. The closed part included the biggest bathroom, and because of that, the school administration ordered 2 toilet barracks to be placed in the schoolyard. So some 7th to 9th graders decided to buy some toilet pipe opener liquid, I don't know what the correct term is, and aluminum foil. They put the aluminum foil inside some plastic bottles and poured a little pipe opener in them with the foil. Someone who's probably done this before knows what's going to happen next. They stuck the 6 bottles total inside the toilet bowls in every stall in one of the barracks and blew them up due to the chemical reaction between the foil and the opener. All the pipings of the single barrack were destroyed due to water pressure inside the pipes. Turns out that the two barracks had connected piping, and the water that was in the bowls in the other barracks shot up to the ceiling due to the pressure. The students never got caught, and if I remember correctly, the incident ended up costing a hefty amount for the school admin. The barracks were taken away and replaced with new ones. After the incident, every recess there was a teacher in front of the barracks monitoring everyone going in and out. Nothing happened to the new ones. Story 10. I went to an incredibly crappy school in London that was in special measures by the time I left at 18 after a year with about 50% attendance and 3 U grades at A level. It is apparently doing fairly well now, since it has been amalgamated into the fold of a local superhead who runs several schools across the surrounding boroughs. But I'll paste what I shared last time since people seem to like it then. Here are many things that happened. A dog/hammer fight in my first week. A rush day. 1 day per year, the kids in year 7 would just get random beats. A couple of stabbings a year. Kid locked the woodwork teacher in the toilets. Woodwork teacher kicked the door off its hinges and set about the kid in the very same way. Someone stole all the computers in the computer room. Kid was stripped and all his clothes and belongings were doused in lighter fluid and burned. Head teacher left for lunch one day and never came back. Our only person making the timetables was the admin/business teacher, died of a heart attack during a class. Starting the following year, no classes were organized for 2 months, graduation year/A2 to boot. Still received weekly notices about attendance during that period. History teacher got pregnant by another teacher, conception apparently on site. They weren't in a relationship. Someone started a rumor that she was assaulted and he was also a pedo. He had to leave the school. Superhead brought in to get us ship-shape, known for taking no crap and turning schools around. Made her quit her entire decades-long career. And lastly, couldn't hire new teachers. Woodworking department was abandoned after the previous incident. Kid trapped another kid in there with a mind to reenact some hostile stuff and tried to slice his femoral artery with a sharpened file. Story 11. Well, first of all, someone smeared peanut butter all over the allergy table. Someone spray painted a swastika and homophobic and racist messages all over the walls. A lot of people bring drugs and alcohol. Someone took all the fire extinguishers and set them off in the cafeteria. Someone threatened to bomb the school multiple times. Someone beat up a teacher. Someone assisted a suicide attempt. Someone caught 2 foreign exchange students banging each other in the girls' bathroom during the lunch period. And this isn't technically illegal, but someone started default dancing during the moment of silence on 9/11. Story 12. One afternoon, a while after school was over, a couple kids started a drug deal. The basher, Goliath, he lived up to that name too, absolute unit, was a renowned druggie who did every drug known to man and 7 only known to dolphins. And the banshee, whom I'll call Carl, tried to sell Goliath some heroin strong enough to kill a baby elephant. Goliath proceeds to take some of it and test it out on the spot, but proceeds to notice that it is a bit weaker than promised, and was basically no stronger than water. Goliath, a bit angry he was undersold, grabs Carl and smashes his head into the nearest brick wall, repeatedly, until parts of Carl's brain splatter over the wall. Goliath snaps back to reality, realizing what he just did, and runs like a madman, as anyone in that situation would. He was still caught, however, and given a long sentence. Not sure if he's still out there alive or if he got his head bashed in by a bigger Goliath. Note, I wasn't there to witness it in action, so take this with a grain of salt, or 12. A lot of it is just what I heard. However, I did see the brains on the wall with my own eyes, and Carl's quick, most definitely not open, casket funeral. Story 13. 3 from when I lived in Florida. First of all, someone thought it would be funny to leave baby powder in the boys' bathroom and got the school locked down for an anthrax attack. We didn't get to go home until 7 p.m. Second, bomb threats. Just so many bomb threats. And third, a legit race war. Super racist skinheads attacked a Puerto Rican student during lunch outside, blindsided him with a lunch tray. He started yelling, a massive fight broke out, 30+ students arrested. My friends and I watched from the other side of the courtyard in awe. Got to enter a witness report to the police, too. Story 14. Half my school burned down because some idiot thought it would be a good idea to light a wrestling mat on fire. Pro tip, wrestling mats are very flammable. We weren't able to have sports all year, talent shows and concerts in the auditorium either. Benefits was we got 2 weeks off from school while they vented and cleaned up the mess. All I can remember was the kid was a minor, so the parents pretty much owed millions to the school. Update, I just googled the kid's name and found out that he died a year later in a car accident near the school he transferred to. Story 15. This gangster guy beat the absolute crap out of another guy. We had a glass partition separating the outside court and the cafeteria. The guy that was being beat up grabbed the other guy and slammed his head against the glass window, and then the blood just poured out. Unfortunately, I had to go around the accident, and by the time I got to the cafeteria, they were out of tacos, dude. It was a bummer. Story 16. A good friend of my dorky group brought contraband Russian vodka to high school all the time. He ran a scam selling fake web hosting and once got into real trouble for making one of those shock websites that had malicious code in it that forced you to physically restart the computer if you wanted out. Yes, he got into trouble because he made another kid's name appear on it, implying that he was the guy being featured in the shock website. Other than that, my high school only had the usual things: drug dealers, thieves, and a certain teacher that tried to coerce girls into giving him favors in exchange for grades, and failing miserably, by the way. Story 17. Our computer teacher was using school equipment to pirate all kinds of stuff. This was 2000 to 2002-ish, and the guy was a dot-com millionaire who used his teaching job to just hang out with high school kids and have fun, in a non-creepy way. We spent his class building and upgrading our personal gaming machines, and he had a big CD case full of pirated operating systems and software. He'd used the budget the school gave him for hardware to buy the latest and greatest video cards, and our final for that class was a Quake 3 tournament. A group of his favorite students also worked at Blockbuster, so they'd take the pre-release DVDs for him, rip them, and upload them to piracy sites from the school's T1. On 9/11, I remember being in his class watching a cam version of the latest Spider-Man movie. Story 18. When I was a freshman, a group of seniors free climbed the side of a 23-story building downtown wearing our school sweatshirts on senior skip day. They actually made it all the way up and were greeted by the police and fire departments, who immediately arrested them. They ended up paying a huge fine for all the emergency services that responded, and it was over every local news channel. Story 19. Someone at my middle school spray painted a giant dong on the outside of the window of the cafeteria. I'm talking like 8 feet tall, highly detailed. No matter what they used, it wouldn't come off no matter how hard they tried to clean it. Eventually, they tried to cover it up with construction paper, but the sun would shine on it and leave a bright silhouette. It was glorious, and the mad lad never got caught. Godspeed. Story 20. 70 student here. Drugs. All manner, all kinds, smokable, eatable, injectable, you name it. My freshman year, I could count on one hand the number of freaks. By my senior year, it was the reverse, and this was at a private religious high school in the Midwest. Oh, and there was a closet-side business in water pipes made from stolen lab glassware, as well as house scales that grew legs and walked off. Good times. Story 21. After the 2016 election, some kid tweeted a picture of Donald Trump with some badly photoshopped crosshairs over his head. Secret Service actually came to the school and took the kid away in the middle of class. I later learned that all they did to him was a stern talking to, just enough to scare the crap out of him. I actually had the teacher whose class got interrupted at a later period. Turns out the Secret Service guy was an old buddy of his from the Marines. Story 22. I went to a private boarding school in rural Vermont. The class body was made up of mostly kids who had been expelled for disciplinary reasons. Despite this, there was little supervision. Students could opt to live in cabins scattered about the campus if they didn't want to live in a dorm. There was a lot of hardcore partying going on, as well as a wealth of petty crime. On multiple occasions, someone would bring in a supply of strong hallucinogenics, and the whole school would trip. Lots of staff/student liaisons and lots of petty crimes occurred. But the most illegal thing was actually the school itself. 2 years before I attended, they had their ability to issue high school diplomas suspended by the state. That didn't stop them until a visible suicide on campus caused the state to shut them down for good 5 years after I graduated. Story 23. Star football player rammed my car with his truck on purpose and totaled it. Principal and vice principal all turned a blind eye and played it down like, oh, boys will be boys. He hit my car on purpose and no one cared. My parents and I go see the vice principal in charge of student parking, and all the VP has to offer is, well, maybe we can have him pay your deductible. No punishment, no detention, nothing. His parents didn't seem to care either. Mind you, this is a car I bought with my own money that was in need of repairs at the time, that my father and I worked on as a project to get running and roadworthy for when I turned 16 so I would have a car to drive. The insurance totaled the car and waived the deductible. I just had to give them the car and they gave me a check. Luckily, it helped that my parents had put a full coverage on it, so I got back most of what I had put into it. But I didn't ask for this, I didn't want this, and I didn't do anything to deserve this. Screw this guy, and screw that school. I just want my damn car back. Story 24. Had a physics teacher in high school who had all sorts of rumors going around about him, like that he was kicked out of his old school for trying to make CP with students and other really messed up stuff. He seemed really distant and creepy, but most thought it was just rumors, until the day the idiot made a stupid mistake during class. He had forgotten that his laptop was still connected to the projector in front of the class, and we all watched him as he casually sat at his desk and browsed through a folder containing pictures of the U-18 swimming squad. I went to an all-boys school, and at the time we were all like, what, this is screwed up, but no one ever confronted him and it never reached management. I really hope he's still not teaching today. Story 25. Not your typical illegal thing, but handling bats. There was a colony of bats in the roof of the science building, which was pretty unusual for my desert city. So, whenever someone found a dead or injured bat on the ground, everyone would crowd around it to try and touch it. The animal-loving girls would all be upset, and some asshole would say he's gonna smash its head. The Hot Topic crowd would joke about turning into vampires, etc. It depends on who was there. This only happened maybe once or twice a year. But in my junior year, a science teacher who actually knew what she was doing caught us and freaked out about the diseases we could get. Everyone had to get a rabies booster, but they were also worried about hantavirus, Lyme disease, and the actual Black Plague. Story 26. A 14-year-old took some Xans and got drunk. She wound up getting banged by a bunch of seniors and football players, most of whom were adults, while someone filmed it on their phone. I think she didn't want to press any charges, so maybe she didn't consider it assault, but she wasn't in any position to consent, obviously. Nobody but the guy filming got in trouble. This strikes me as one of those cases where the DA should have just pressed charges anyway. Story 27. Our VP has inappropriate relations with a student. The aforementioned student decided to break it off one day, which caused the VP to begin physically stalking the student. VP eventually got caught assaulting said student. Somehow, VP did not go to jail, returned to work a month later, and everyone pretended like nothing happened. Supposedly, this case got all the way up to the superintendent of the school district, and everyone turned a blind eye. If anything, the administration spun the story to make it seem like the student was the instigator. She became the principal the following school year and never had to register as a sex offender. Story 28. There was a group of 4 tough guys at my high school who used to film each other beating up handicapped people at night around town. They would do the same to really drunk people leaving bars at night. Unfortunately, they weren't small guys and people were afraid to confront them. They used to drive around with the tapes and recording equipment in the trunk of the car they shared. They got caught because one day some stuff happened and they jumped my friend group as we were biking down the road together. The 4 of us, being able-bodied human beings, put up a fight and hurt 2 of them pretty bad. We were also 2 to 3 years younger. This was very public in the middle of the day on a busy road near an on/off ramp for the local highway. As they tried to take off in their car, 2 Greyhound buses driving by and a woman in a minivan cut across the road to block the lanes and lock them in. The tough guys ended up driving off the road and threw the debris and foliage on the side of the road and took off. Everyone got a real good look at them and police found them a few hours later with all the stuff still in their trunk. We eventually went to court months later about it, and they had the audacity to tell the judge magistrate they were just trying to teach us a lesson about how to behave. Fast forward 15 years, one of them is dead, 2 are in prison, and 1 is living a real crap, drug-ridden life back in our hometown still. Story 29. During my senior year, I duplicated government property. I made fake sports passes for my good buddies during football season. The only thing that was missing was the school mascot embedded in the background. Our football and basketball teams sucked, so no one wanted to pay. Basketball season, word got out and people got red paper and wrote fake pass in Sharpie on it. So one of my buddies got caught with one of my good ones and ratted me out. Following Monday, a cop came and got me out of class. Had a meeting with principal and cop saying I could be charged because I was 18 and it was a serious matter. Then went to meet with the athletic director. Cop escorting me the whole time. They thought it was a scheme that was going on for years. Told them I was the initial mastermind and only made 5 passes, even though it was more like 10. He yelled a bit, and I should have gotten 7 days out of school and 7 days in-school suspension. Only got 7-day in-school suspension because I had a good track record. Parents were harder on time than the school. Story 30. Yesterday, 4 kids got caught with a cap gun at my high school and we got put in lockdown. They had to break into each class one at a time and escort the students to the special ed/adult learning high school across the road. Like, I'm talking full-on commando soldiers with assault rifles. The lockdown started 2 minutes before school ended, and the last class was escorted at around 6:40-ish. Luckily, my class was the first at 4:40-ish. It's scary, man.